Welcome to another Explainer. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're about to go on a really fascinating journey. We're going to decode the foundational forces that actually govern our everyday decisions. We hear the word economics tossed around on the news all the time, right? And usually it's followed by some highly complex charts and a ton of intimidating jargon. But what if I told you that economics isn't actually just about money or stock markets or bank interest rates? At its core, it's a study of human behavior. It is literally the ultimate science of choice. So today we're going to strip away all that complexity and look at the core principles that dictate how we, both as individuals and as entire societies, navigate a world of limits.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're breaking this massive subject down into 5 highly digestible steps. We'll start with the science of choice, then move into wants, resources, and scarcity. After that, we'll compare micro versus macroeconomics, then we'll check out facts, values, and logic, and finally we'll bring it all together with the price of choosing.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the science of choice. We're setting the stage here to uncover what economics actually means, well beyond just the numbers. So, have you ever faced a really difficult choice among different alternatives? Well, of course you have. Every single day, literally from the exact moment your alarm rings, you are making choices. Do I hit snooze or do I get up? Do I buy a coffee or make one at home? Do I study for my exam or watch a movie? You make these choices because, well, you can't do everything. Your time, your energy, your money, they are all limited. Grounding these abstract theories in your everyday reality is absolutely crucial because economics is, quite literally, the study of how you handled that exact problem.
Now, historically speaking, while humans have obviously been making economic choices since the dawn of time, the actual science of economics, in its modern form, is only about 200 years old. It really began to take shape when Adam Smith, who is pretty universally recognized as the father of modern economics, published his monumental book, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of Wealth of Nations, way back in 1776. This book really established the authority and the whole framework for treating economics as a distinct, rigorous subject. While the definitions of economics have definitely evolved over time, shifting from wealth to welfare and scarcity to growth, today the formal accepted definition is that economics is a social science which studies the efficient allocation of scarce resources to attain the maximum fulfillment of unlimited human needs. So let's actually break that down. Basically, it means we have limited stuff, but we want an unlimited amount of things. Economics is effectively the instruction manual for how we choose to use our limited productive resources, things like land, labor, and technology, to produce commodities that satisfy as many of those endless desires as humanly possible.
And that foundational idea of choice leads us perfectly into Section 2, where we confront the core problem that makes choosing necessary in the first place: scarcity.
Here is the absolute core of the issue, the fundamental paradox of human existence. On one side, we have unlimited human wants. Society's material desires are just boundless. But on the other side, we have limited economic resources. The means to actually satisfy those wants are totally finite. Now, it is incredibly important to understand that scarcity is not the same thing as a shortage. A shortage is just a temporary situation where people can't get what they want at the current price, like maybe a grocery store runs out of toilet paper for a week. But scarcity is a permanent, universal problem. It reflects the everlasting imbalance between our infinite desires and our finite reality.
Because resources are scarce, economists generally group them into 4 main buckets. First, it takes human effort, or labor, which earns a wage. It requires raw materials and space, categorized as land, which yields rent. You also need the tools and factories, capital, which generates interest. And finally, it requires visionary entrepreneurship to risk combining all these things, hoping for the ultimate reward: profit. Pretty much every good or service you interact with today is a combination of these 4 scarce resources.
Moving right along, let's tackle Section 3, micro versus macroeconomics. Because this whole puzzle of resources is so vast, economists have to analyze it through 2 totally distinct lenses.
Really, the crucial point here is the scale of it all. Imagine you're standing in a massive forest. Microeconomics looks at the individual trees. It focuses on the economic behavior of individual decision-making units. That's you, your household, a single firm, or a specific market. It determines exactly how prices are set for a single product. Macroeconomics, on the other hand, zooms all the way out to look at the entire forest. It deals with the aggregate behavior of the economy as a whole, focusing on massive national phenomena like total output, general price levels, and national employment.
Practically speaking, you can clearly see how micro focuses on individuals dealing with specific prices, while macro zooms out to national income and general price levels. But the biggest takeaway here is that these 2 branches aren't competing with each other.
They are entirely complementary. You literally cannot fully understand the macroeconomy without understanding the micro decisions of the individuals that make it up, and vice versa.
Okay, on to Section 4. Let's explore the logical tools and perspectives economists use to actually make sense of the world. How do they build their arguments? Economists basically view the world through two distinct analytical frameworks. Positive economics is all about the facts. It attempts to describe the world exactly as it is. For example, stating the current inflation rate in Ethiopia is 12% is a positive statement. You can go and check it against real data. Normative economics, however, deals with value judgments and opinions. It asks what ought to be. So a statement like, the poor should pay no taxes is normative. It's totally subjective. You can't prove it with facts, you can only debate it or vote on it based on what you personally believe is good or bad.
Once they separate the facts from the values, economists start building theories. One major way is through inductive reasoning. This is a bottom-up approach. You start by pinpointing a specific problem, you gather real-world data, and piece by piece, you establish a cause and effect relationship to form a broad general theory. You're moving logically from the particular, specific facts up to a general principle.
Deductive reasoning flips that entirely on its head. It's a top-down approach. You start with a broad, known truth or a set of assumptions, you formulate a hypothesis about a specific problem, and then you go test it against real-world facts. So one builds up and the other drills down. Both are absolutely essential tools in an economist's toolkit.
And that brings us to our fifth and final section, the price of choosing. We're going to see how all these concepts of scarcity, logic, and resources culminate in a mathematical and visual model of choice.
Because resources are scarce, every single choice you make involves a hidden cost. Economists call this opportunity cost. It is the value of the next best alternative that you absolutely must sacrifice in order to obtain one more unit of a product. Notice something really important here. It's not measured in money. It's measured in goods, services, or experiences. If you choose to spend your entire evening studying, the opportunity cost is the movie you couldn't watch. Choosing one thing always means giving up another.
Let's actually put some real numbers to this to see how it plays out, using a great example from our source material. Imagine a hypothetical economy that can only produce food and computers. If the economy decides it wants to shift its resources to produce more computers, it has to pull resources away from farming, right? According to the data, to produce one additional computer, the economy has to give up exactly 0.2 metric tons of food. That 0.2 metric tons of food is the opportunity cost of that single computer. It's a direct, quantifiable sacrifice.
To visually represent this whole dynamic of scarcity and choice, economists use a really famous model called the Production Possibilities Frontier, or the PPF. But to draw this curve, we have to make some pretty strict assumptions to simplify reality. We assume that the quantity and quality of resources and technology are totally fixed for the year. We assume the economy only produces two goods, and most importantly, we assume the economy is operating at full employment and absolute efficiency. Under these exact conditions, we can map out the absolute limits of what a society can actually achieve.
Now, when we map this out, any point on the curve means society is choosing exactly how much of one good to sacrifice for the other. But what happens when an economy grows? Like what happens when we invent better technology or discover new, high-quality resources? Well, the entire frontier shifts outward. That expansion from the old frontier to the new one, that represents economic growth. Suddenly, combinations of goods that were completely unattainable before are now completely possible. We've literally expanded the horizon of our choices.
And that, my friends, wraps up our explainer for today. You know, economics isn't just lines on a graph. It's the very fabric of how we navigate a world of limits. You now know for a fact that scarcity drives choice, and choice creates opportunity cost. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Now that this explainer is over, what is the opportunity cost of whatever you choose to do next? Think carefully about what you're giving up. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring the fascinating science of choice.